Right, what we're going to take a look at is rigs, a couple of different lead setups, the materials that I use, got a couple of little tips down here for you, and sort of the bait that I'm going to be on for this year. So what we'll do is we'll start off with this one. So you have a faithful blowback rig. You'll know that me and Albert have caught a lot of big fish on this, especially Albert. All his carp from the Carp Captures series a couple of years ago were caught on this. He's still catching carp on it now. Paul uses it as well. There's two versions of this. I've got the tube blowback rig, which is basically just a piece of tube here as opposed to a ring. Basically the tube's better because once it goes round it stays there. Problem is with a ring is that it can slide on the hook, which basically means that you're not going to properly get a proper hook hold and you're not going to be able to basically keep the fish on. What this is compressing of is a size 8 fang twister from Nash, a little clear bit of shrink tube there from Korda. Obviously I do prefer the clear stuff when it's just on tube, when it's just for tube blowback rigs. And then I've just got a piece of shrink tube there, diffusion camo from Nash, and I've just got a piece of missing link. It's probably about 2 inches long, and then that's combied to a bit of trigger link there. Well, you might think that's a bit bright, but what I do is I'll get a bit of rig putty or a bit of clay and I'll rub up and down it until it goes a little bit darker, and then basically all that does is once it's immersed in water, trigger link is brilliant. It's a hook link that basically does that. It pulls like that. So as soon as the fish picks up your rig, realises something is wrong, instead of being or trying to get rid of the hook, the carp, as he's trying to shaking his head like that, trying to get rid of the lead and the hook, basically he's just putting that hook in further and further and further. And if you remember, I caught a 28-pound carp using this very rig. He was a very spooky fish, and I nailed him pretty much on the first day that I went down there properly going after him. So that's the tube blowback rig, and yes, it's caught a lot of carp for me. We'll just try it. Bam, nailed. And what I would do personally is I'd have putting boilies everywhere at the moment. Then I'd have one of these 4G squid bottom baits on, and then I'd have a half 4G squid pop up on. These are being immersed at the moment in the bait soak, just so I can get a quick extra bite. So that's what I would personally use. Let's have a look at the next rig. The next rig is a zig rig, and it is literally basically a hook on a piece of line. That then at the upper end, at this end, would be attached to one of your lead systems, which we'll have a look at in a little bit. I use the Nash Zig Bugs. These are my favourite ones really. These are ones that all my bites have come on when I have been zig fishing. And one little tip I can give you is if you are using something like the 4G or the Key or any good bait, if you literally go like that, so you dip your zig bug into basically the bait enhancement systems or the bait soaks, it just gives that a little bit more of a kick to it. Really, it's basically it's caught me a lot of fish on days where zig fishing hasn't really been at its best. By just dipping it in a bit of flavour, I managed to get bites. Also, you can use one of these little controller floats. These are from Korda. I actually quite like these little controller floats, and you can basically just fish a zig on the surface. Again, using one of the dips, which would be excellent. And then finally, down here, I've got some different foams that you can use. If you're looking for a quick bite, the brighter colours. If you're looking for more finicky fish, the darker colours. If you're fishing with floaters and you want to fish a zig just under stuff, use a bit of cork and use that. And what I always use when I'm zig fishing is I always use this Klingon tungsten rig tube from Nash, just to make sure that all the lead, everything down, is out of the way. Even though you are fishing, could be 2-3 foot off the surface, off the bottom, sorry, I still want to keep everything pinned flat. So I just use this Klingon tungsten rig tube. It's really good stuff actually, this is. I've been using it now for about a year and nothing comes close to it. And one little final thing that I use for the zig fishing is this Zig Flow from Nash. This is the 12 £. This is their strongest Zig Flow line that they use, but it's a very strong line. And what can I say, it's absolutely brilliant. I even use it for surface fishing as well. Right, so that's zigs covered. Now what we're going to have is we're going to have a look at a soft hinge rig. And basically what I've done is I've tied up a little tiny chod rig there, like so. And then I've tied on a bit of this Combi Link from Nash, which is new out. And that just creates a bit of a softer hinge. I use this for pop-up fishing. And I tell you what, it's one of the best rigs out there at the moment. I'm catching a lot of fish on it, and it's this version. I don't particularly like stiff rigs. I think they just sit funny on the bottom personally, but that's why I adapted the stiff hinge rig to the soft hinge rig. I did see it in a magazine a couple of years ago. I didn't think really anything of it, and I tried it one day. I caught a 20 pounder, and really for the last year and a half now I've been using it, and it's been working really well for me. And basically at the upper end I've just got one of these quick change systems and a little diffusion camo sleeve to go over it, just so it all blends nicely in. And what I'll do is I'll put one of these, the key pop-ups on at this end. I'd fish over the 4G with that. It's a lovely little combination. I'll just put a nice big bit of rig putty on there just to balance it all out. And then I've got the multi-rig here, which is tied up with Armour Link, if I can find it. Armour Link in 20 £. I do like strong hook links. I'm not really one for going down to fine hook links and all of that. It's just stupid in my opinion. And that's tied up using a Chod twister hook from Nash, a little tiny micro swivel, a little diffusion camo hook bead there, and basically it does this. If I can show you nicely, it does that. And I use this for pop-up fishing, and it's caught me a few fish. I'll be trying it a lot more this year, and it's probably around about 7-8 inches, I'd say. At the upper end I've just got one of these little diffusion camo sleeves, so when I do loop to loop it onto one of these lead systems, that just goes up. It just creates a bit of a better presentation. And all it really is you just get a bit of braid, tie a loop in one end, tie a loop in the other. I use check that out a little bit. And I'll use this rig pretty much anywhere really. What I'll do is I'll put a bit of putty on there just so it kicks up like that, and that's how it sits on the bottom until a nice carp comes along and has it. I know that Paul uses it a lot. Albert has tried it once or twice, and yes, it's a nice little rig really. It does, well, you can see there, it does catch on pretty well, and it's a nice little lake if you're trying to get nice little rig that if you're trying to get a quick bite on a lake. And then finally, from my part of the rig bit, we've got the ever faithful D-rig. Danny Fairbrass from Corder uses this. I've only used it a couple of times. Basically, I've got a Nash curve hook there. I've got fluorocarbon from Corder. At the upper end, I've got a swivel, again with one of them little Nash diffusion rubbers on. Micro rig swivel. Basically, to tie this rig, it's ever so simple. You just form a loop under the hook, wrap around the hook a couple of times, get the tag end, go back through the loop, tie it, put your micro rig swivel on, do a knotless knot as normal, and then there it is. I use this with slow sinking baits, which will basically be one of these with a little bit of foam in it, ever so slightly sinking. And again, this has caught me a few fish over the years. I know Paul uses it. I know Albert uses it quite a lot now. And it's basically catching carp everywhere we go. Right, so that's my rigs covered. I was going to talk you through a couple of different lead setups. Here we have the ever faithful running rig, which basically means that the lead runs on a leader, and that's diffusion camo running rig parts there. So you've got a buffer bead and you've got your little special lead attachment. So that'll just go like that, and then that is put onto the old ever faithful Klingon leader in silt. I like to use this in the winter time really, and just as the weed is coming up, this is when I'll be using running rigs. And then throughout the summer I don't really use them. I use the lead clips and that are down there, and that's just with a 2 ounce lead on. I do use this rig for stalking a lot, so when I'm stalking those big old gales, I'll put one of these on, and it's caught me quite a few carp. This one is actually on a Polyfuse leader. It's the weed safety clip from Nash, which basically means the little tail here and the actual clip are a little bit shorter inside, which ensures that the lead can pop off a lot easier. When I'm fishing in heavy weed, I like to use this. Even on snaggy lakes, where I know there's a lot of snags, rivers, canals, anywhere really where I think the carp are going to get snagged up, I prefer using this one. And basically that's got a 2.5 ounce lead on it with a nice little ring swivel, and then I'll just attach one of my rigs to it, and it's just so much safer having a shorter, as you can see there, shorter sleeve, a shorter arm. It's just so much easier for the fish to get rid of the lead, and that's my criticism of a lot of other lead clip makes. That they don't really get rid of the lead quick enough. I use this lead clip here, probably about 85 to 90% of my fishing, especially if I'm fishing in heavy weed. I want to get rid of that lead, get that carp up on the surface, and then I can just get it in my net. Again, this is another lead clip. Put them boilies back on that lid. Don't worry about that one. This is the standard one. This is the one that I'll be using in the day ticket part of this film. Basically, if I'm on a day ticket waterway, I know there's a lot of smaller carp, not too many snags, not too many weed. I'll use this one because I don't want to be losing the lead on every take, especially with the cost of lead these days. I don't particularly want to have 20 bites and 20 leads out in the lake. I'd rather have at least 5 or 6 bites and lose a lead than to lose a lead on every single take. That just gets annoying and expensive. Again, on the Klingon leader, I do like this stuff, and I've basically put a nice little swivel in there, and that is actually where I'd have my soft hinge stiff rig. And that's what I use. And then finally, this nice little system from Nash, the Chod bead, which I like. Again on the Klingon leader, and basically all it is your lead is on the side of this special little clip, and if you push down, your lead comes away. It's actually a beautiful little system. I use this when I'm fishing in really thick, heavy weed, especially the Canadian pondweed, and it's just a nice little system. Your Chod rig goes on there as normal. And it's just a nice little system on there. I've got a nice little pear lead, and that is basically what I fish with and what I use. One thing I will say is that when you are casting in, that will go down to the bottom there. It won't get rid of your lead, which is good. I haven't even had any troubles with this. I think I've lost one fish on it, but that was due to personal problems. It wasn't the tackle, it was me not paying attention, really. And that's that. So that's the rigs that I'll be using this year. My favourite rigs, couple of different products down here. You've got the Combi Link in weed and silt there. The Armour Link in silt and weed. Missing Link, it's been out for a few years now. The Chod Link, oh, sorry about that. The Chod Link, obviously for tying up your chods and all of that. Your Klingon leader, and then obviously the Trigger Link, which I ran out of at the moment. So yeah, that's my rigs covered and what I like to use.